Halloween night in Perryville, Kentucky. The air was sharp and cold, carrying the weight of old battle smoke no one alive had ever breathed. Our unit had been sent to patrol the outskirts, near the ruins of a chapel that the locals whispered about. I remember the captain calling it routine security, but none of us believed him. Not with the way the villagers looked at us when we set out, muttering warnings about the Scarecrow Man who watched the altar when the pumpkin fires burned. There were 4 of us on that patrol: a stern captain who spoke little, a rookie who couldn't keep his hands steady, a veteran who claimed he'd seen omens before, and one man who cracked jokes to hide the nerves eating at him. We tried to walk like soldiers, but the October wind cut through us, and every radio in the squad began to hiss with static. That was the first sign. The second came when we saw them. Pumpkins lined the weeds leading to the chapel, each one carved with twisted faces that seemed to scream, their faint glow barely holding in the dark. The closer we got, the heavier the silence grew, like the night itself was holding its breath. What we found inside that chapel was him, the Scarecrow Man. Before we start, make sure to hit the subscribe button and comment where you're watching from. Now let's step into the story. We got the assignment 2 days before Halloween. The brief fit on a single page: secure the old chapel on the Perryville Ridge, deter trespassers, log any unusual activity, return before dawn. It read like a checklist for a slow night. The captain read it out loud in the tent and kept his face flat. He was good at that. He had a square jaw and a stare that made you stand up straighter. He introduced himself on day 1 as Captain Hargrove and never offered a first name. He liked order. He liked answers. He liked the kind of missions where a gate gets locked and everyone goes home. We were a small patrol, 4 in total. Hargrove, a veteran named Avery with stormy eyes and a quiet habit of rubbing a brass coin between his fingers. A rookie named Benton who smelled faintly of laundry detergent, like the barracks had not fully washed off him. And me, I had enough years in to know when silence means worry. The 4th man, Cole, joined us just before sunset on the day of the patrol. He walked in with a grin and a bag of sunflower seeds. He had the grin of someone who pretends he is not nervous, then chews to keep his hands busy. The day before the patrol, we met the liaison from the Historical Society. She wore a green jacket and carried a clipboard. She did not like the word patrol. She preferred the phrase site protection. She told us about the chapel with a fixed tone, as if she were reciting a plaque. The place had been built after the Civil War. The foundation came from nearby farm stones, many of which were taken from fields where soldiers had died. She said people did that without thinking about it. They reused rock. They moved fences. The land shifted, bones surfaced, then disappeared. She told us about the Battle of Perryville, a day of heat and smoke in 1862. Thousands dead or missing, bodies left in ravines and corn rows because the water ran low and the stretcher teams gave up. Later, when families came hunting for sons and brothers, the markers were wrong. A name might sit over the wrong bones. The chapel was meant to soothe that fact. It gave people a place to pray when the graves had no certainty. We listened. Hargrove took notes. Benton kept nodding in a quick rhythm, like he needed to prove he was tracking every word. Cole asked if the chapel had running water. The liaison frowned. He said it mattered in case of fire. She said no. The bell tower had collapsed decades ago. The roof had holes. The floor was rotting. There were stones in the nave that the county would not move because they carried old markings no one had decoded. When she left, Avery spat a sunflower seed into a paper cup and cleared his throat. He said the locals did not come near that place at night. He said every year on Halloween, you could see lights moving around the chapel from the highway, sometimes orange, sometimes white, sometimes like lightning that never struck. He said those lights did not show up on phone cameras. People tried, then claimed the images were smudged or missing. He had heard it from a cook in town, the kind who does not invent that sort of thing. Hargrove did not like that line of talk. He said our job was to check the site and keep it from vandals. He said any lights were likely kids with flashlights or a farmer with a lantern. He said we should avoid repeating local myths because they clutter the mind and get people hurt. Then he added a line that surprised me. He said we would not record audio inside the chapel, only notes. He would file the report himself in the morning. That told me more than the briefing did. He had already been warned that the place had stories, and he did not want recordings that might go sideways. A typed report can keep a tone. Audio can betray a breath or a pause. The day passed slow. We checked radios, tested batteries, and counted glow sticks. The armory issued us standard rifles and 2 flashlights with red filters to preserve night vision. Avery cleaned his rifle with deliberate care. He worked the rag into the chamber, then checked his coin. The coin was smooth and warm from his hands. He said it came from a barn near Stones River. He would not say how he got it. Benton asked every question twice. What channel for squad? What channel for base? What is our call sign? What is the code for abort? He asked about the perimeter plan. He asked if he should carry the bolt cutters. Hargrove told him to breathe. Cole told him to write things on his wrist. Benton laughed and actually did it. We drove out an hour before full dark. The road snaked through fields that rolled under the moon like waves. You could feel the war in the ground if you looked too long. Fence posts lined the ridges like ribs. The wind pressed flat along the crops and pulled a soft hiss from the grass. We passed a small cemetery with stones that tilted, the names washed pale. I saw a bouquet of plastic flowers turned bright by a car's headlights that had moved on. It was like a ghost of daylight trapped in a coil of wire. We parked by an old cattle gate. The truck ticked as it cooled. The ridge climbed in front of us as a gray silhouette against a deeper gray sky. I remember the smell. Damp hay, cold iron, and a faint sweet rot. The kind you get near old apples after a frost. The chapel sat near the top. It looked harmless from a distance. A broken rectangle with a roof that sloped too much on one side. The bell frame had long been empty. Vines threaded the stones like veins. One wall had blackened patches where fire had licked it and moved on. The door hung crooked. It wore rust like old blood. We organized near the gate. Hargrove reviewed the plan. I would take the left approach with Avery and check the outer perimeter. Cole and Benton would take the right approach and scan for signs of vandalism. We would meet at the entrance. Inside, we would move in a simple sweep. Nave, apse, side chapel, storage. Then we would secure loose boards and place warning tape, in and out. No heroics. Right then, a pickup came up the road and stopped behind us. An old man rolled down his window and tipped a hat. He had the careful look of someone who has watched the same town for too long. He asked where we were headed. Hargrove said we were on a routine patrol of public property. The man nodded and said, "Before you go up, you should take this." He held out a small jar of clear liquid and a sprig of something green. He told us it was for the air. The weeds up there held a wet breath, he said, and the breath liked to cling to people. Hargrove thanked him and set the items on the truck bed. The man frowned, then drove on. Cole whispered that we should have kept the sprig. Avery said it was rosemary, and I wondered how he knew that in the dark. We started up the path. The moon slid behind a cloud and the world lost its edges. My boots sank into soft spots where water pooled under grass. The radios clicked and hissed. It was not the usual chatter. It was a dry, papery sound that crawled in the signal. We tried 3 channels and the hiss followed like a shadow. We could still talk, but it felt like every word had to push through dust. Halfway up, Avery pointed with his chin. In the weeds, a line of carved pumpkins sat in a path that curved toward the chapel like a broken necklace. The glow was faint and steady, not like candles, more like coals. The faces had been cut in a hurry. The cuts were uneven. The mouths looked stretched and frightened. The eyes were not round. They were slits, sharp and long, like someone had tried to cut them open to see more than eyes should. Benton whispered that they looked fresh. He was right. The edges of the cuts still showed pale flesh. No browning, no sag. Someone had set them there before dark. He asked if we should kick them aside. Hargrove said no. Do not touch anything you did not bring. The closer we got, the more the air shifted. At first it smelled like wet straw. Then something metallic came in and sat at the back of the throat. The air felt thicker. I breathed slower and found myself counting. 4 inches, 4 out. My body knew that rhythm from long nights. It helped. The wind calmed, then quit. I could hear my steps and the small ticks of beetles moving in the grass, and the distant bark of a dog that sounded smaller than its echo. We reached the entrance at the same time as Cole and Benton. Cole had quieted down. Benton had the wide, locked look of someone trying not to blink too much. We stood for a moment, four shapes in a doorway, and peered inside. The chapel interior kept the night like a cup keeps water. It did not release it. Dust hung in flat sheets that refused to move. Straw lay scattered across the floor, clumped with dark stains that might have been soot. Symbols had been burned into the stone walls, circles with eyes. Rough ladders that led nowhere. Names scratched into the mortar by an old nail. Some letters looked sharp, others had softened under years of damp. I saw a cross with two crossbars, then a simple triangle with a dot in the center, then a coil shaped like a snake that had swallowed its own tail. Avery raised his light and stopped. The beam seemed to slow as it crossed the air. He whispered that the rafters looked wrong. I followed the beam. The rafters had fresh rope draped over them in loops, as if someone had hung it up to dry. The rope twitched. Not a lot. Enough to make your gut tighten. We scanned for animals and saw none. The rope stilled. Cole tried a joke. He said the decorators had no taste. No one laughed. He did not press it. He knew when to let the silence sit. Hargrove gave the signal to enter. We held position for a count, then stepped over the threshold one by one. The floor groaned under my weight. The boards had a different voice than usual, a deeper tone, like a church organ that had gone out of tune. The sound traveled across the room and came back softer, as if the walls had swallowed half and saved it for later. We spread out slowly. Every foot found purchase like it was asking a favor. The radio on my chest popped. A soft whisper tried to come through. It did not form a word. It sounded like someone dragging a bag across dried leaves. I tapped the push to talk and said we would proceed in two teams. Avery and I would clear left. Cole and Benton would clear right. Hargrove would hold the center line and keep eyes on us. We moved past the first row of benches. One lay on its side with a split down the middle. Another had candle wax pooled on it in islands. The altar stood at the far end, a block of stone with a chipped corner. Behind it, a tall shape waited in the shadow like a coat on a stand. My light brushed it and slid off. I did not look at it long, not yet. There is a rhythm to clearing a place like that. You do not lock on to the center until you feel the corners are understood. Avery knelt by a scorched mark and touched the edge with his glove. He said it was recent. The ash was not compacted. He smelled the glove, then nodded to himself. He did not explain, and I did not ask. He looked up at the ceiling again and did that coin rub. The coin clicked against his knuckles with a soft, patient sound. On the right, Benton paused by a framed piece of cloth. The glass was cracked. The cloth had black shapes that looked like stains, then resolved into letters that time had pushed apart. A list of names, some with ranks, some with no last names, just initials. Benton began to read. Cole told him to keep moving. Benton apologized to the air, then moved. I tried the storage door. It moved half an inch, then caught. Something heavy leaned against it from the inside. I put my shoulder into the wood and felt the give of old hinges that did not want to be remembered. A smell of wet burlap and soil slid out of the gap. I could hear a very slow drip in there, like a distant faucet that someone never fixed. Hargrove said to leave it for now. He wanted the main room clear first. His voice was calm. I knew that calm. It had gravel in it that only came out when he was pushing down his own questions. We came back to center. That was when I finally looked full at the shape near the altar. It was tall. It had a body made of rags and straw bound with wire. Arms hung long and almost reached the floor. The head was wrong. Not a head. A pumpkin. Big and round with a face carved in a wide grin. It should have looked ridiculous. It did not. The grin did not sit still. The cuts seemed to flex, as if the skin of the pumpkin knew it was being seen. The eyes were wide and deep and held a light that did not come from a flame. It pulsed from inside like a heart that had never been human. Cole whispered a single word. Scarecrow. The word dropped into the hush and did not come back. Avery took a slow breath and spoke so quietly I barely heard him. He said the old stories called him the Scarecrow Man. He said people used to leave offerings when the harvest failed. Bits of straw, old buttons, the last good apple in a barrel. They hoped the dead would stay quiet if they fed the straw. He said the chapel sat on ground that had been turned too many times and the bones had not found rest. He said you can pile prayers on top of bones, but bones listen to other things. Benton swallowed hard. He said it was a prank. He said someone set it up to scare kids. He asked if we should knock it down. Hargrove held up a hand. He stepped toward the altar and stopped at 10 feet. He looked at the floor and frowned. The boards there were newer, a different grain, a different color. Someone had replaced a square patch at some point and done a poor job hiding it. He turned to me and asked for the pry bar. That was the moment when the wind came back. It touched the back of my neck and went still. The pumpkin eyes brightened just a little, as if it had noticed that we had noticed the floor. The rope above us shifted. The radios went dead for one count, then popped with that papery hiss again. Hargrove took the bar. He knelt and slid it into the seam of the new boards. He pressed, then stopped. He looked up at us and spoke in a steady, clipped voice. "We are not here for myths," he said. "We are here for whatever is under this floor." He leaned on the bar. The wood creaked. The chapel answered with a low sound, almost a hum, like stones clearing their throat at the same time. The board lifted an inch, then two, and that was when the night truly began to move. Hargrove wedged the pry bar deeper into the wood. The boards groaned as he leaned his weight on them. The sound carried through the chapel like something old was waking up. Dust fell from the rafters. The rope above us twitched again. No one spoke. Even Cole, who always had something smart to say, pressed his lips tight. Benton gripped his rifle so hard I thought he might snap the strap. The board cracked. Hargrove pulled it up and pushed it aside. A rush of cold air poured out of the opening, sharp and damp, as if the ground had been holding its breath for years. We crouched around the hole. The beam from my flashlight found bones. Not just one set, piles, skulls, ribs, black fragments of uniforms. They were mixed with straw and rotten wood, as if someone had tried to bury them in a hurry and failed. Benton whispered, "These are soldiers." His voice shook. Avery nodded. "Unburied. That's why the place doesn't sit right. They left them under the chapel. No markers, no prayers." He rubbed his coin with 2 fingers, his eyes locked on the bones. Cole forced a laugh. "So what? We stumbled into a graveyard renovation?" Big deal, but no one joined him. The pumpkin head at the altar pulsed brighter. The grin stretched wide, then narrow, like it was breathing with us. The eyes burned deeper orange. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once. Not loud, not soft. Dry, like leaves scraping stone. "Finish the harvest, or join the straw." Benton yelped and stumbled back, tripping over a bench. His rifle clattered. The sound snapped us into motion. Hargrove barked, "Stay sharp!" It's not real, but his jaw tightened. He didn't believe that any more than we did. The Scarecrow moved. Its long arms dragged across the straw floor, pulling itself upright. The body was patchwork cloth and rope, but it held shape like muscle. The pumpkin head glowed steady now, heat waves curling off the carved mouth. Cole raised his rifle and fired. 3 rounds tore through the chest. Straw burst into the air like sparks from a grinder. For a moment, the figure sagged. Then the straw drifted back, winding into place, sealing the holes. The grin on the pumpkin widened. "Don't waste ammo," Avery muttered. His hand never left the coin. The radios hissed louder, filling with static like rain. Through it, a voice broke. Faint, distorted. It sounded like men shouting orders, old bugles, the chaos of battle, the past bleeding into our channel. Hargrove tried to call command, nothing but static. He switched frequencies. Same result. Every voice belonged to ghosts. Then the floor trembled. Not hard, just enough to make the boards knock against each other. Dust sifted from the ceiling. From the hole in the floor came a faint rattling, like bones shifting. The Scarecrow raised one arm. Its hand was nothing but a bundle of sticks tied together. But when it pointed at us, I felt weight on my chest, like it wasn't pointing at my body, like it was pointing at my name. "We need to get out," Benton stammered. He tried to back toward the door, but the door slammed shut on its own. The iron hinges screamed. The chapel sealed us in. Avery stepped closer to the hole in the floor. He looked at the bones, then at the Scarecrow. His voice was steady. "It doesn't want us. It wants them. It wants the bones put to rest." The Scarecrow's pumpkin eyes flared as if answering. The walls seemed to breathe, the burnt symbols glowing faintly like embers. Hargrove shook his head. "We're not grave diggers, we're soldiers." "Tonight we're both," Avery said. For a second, no one moved. Then the chapel floor buckled under us. The board split wider, spilling bones into the open. A skull rolled across the floor and stopped at Benton's boots. He froze. The empty socket stared up at him. "Pick it up," Avery said. Benton shook his head. His hands trembled. The Scarecrow leaned closer, its grin stretching to the sides of its glowing head. The sound of straw shifting filled the chapel, like 100 hands brushing dry stalks. I bent down. My fingers touched the skull. It was colder than ice, lighter than I expected, like it had been waiting to be lifted. When I raised it, the static in the radio cleared for a heartbeat. I heard one clear voice, a soldier's voice, ragged and distant. "Bury us." Then the static returned. Cole swallowed hard. "You heard that too?" I nodded. Hargrove exhaled. His voice was low, controlled. "Fine. We finish this. Quiet and fast. We bury them outside." He pointed at the hole. "We move them one by one." The Scarecrow stepped back from the altar, as if granting us room. But its eyes never left us. The grin never closed. We started pulling bones out of the hole. Skulls, ribs, femurs tangled with straw, and bits of blue-gray cloth. Every piece we touched made the radios flicker with voices. Not screams, not threats. Just orders, prayers, cries for water. The echoes of men who died and never left. We carried them out the door and across the yard to the cemetery we had passed. The ground there was soft, the earth dark and damp. We dug with our hands, with knives, with whatever we had. The soil gave way easy, like it had been waiting. One by one, we laid the bones down, covered them, marked the spot with stones. Each time we finished a mound, the static cleared a little longer. The air lightened. But with each burial, the Scarecrow's glow grew weaker. The pumpkin grin shrank, fighting to hold shape. It shifted between rage and sorrow, the carved mouth trembling as if it wanted to scream but couldn't. By the time we laid the fifth set of bones to rest, Benton whispered, "It's working." Avery shook his head. "It's only working if we finish them all." We turned back to the chapel. More bones waited in the hole. The Scarecrow loomed over them, arms spread wide. The glow from its head flared once more. We weren't finished, and it wasn't going to let us stop. We went back inside to finish the job, but the chapel didn't look the same anymore. The air was thicker, like smoke without fire. The walls looked darker. The symbols burned deeper into the stone. The Scarecrow still stood at the altar, but now its arms hung low, almost dragging the floor. The grin on the pumpkin was stretched too far, carved lines bending in ways they shouldn't. The glow inside its head pulsed hard, like it was struggling to keep its shape. The hole in the floor had widened. More bones pushed through the boards mixed with straw. It looked like the ground itself was trying to spit them out. We froze at the doorway. No one wanted to step back in. Hargrove broke the silence. "We keep moving." "Same as before? Don't stop." His voice was calm, but his eyes gave him away. He looked at the Scarecrow like he was looking at a live grenade. Benton shook his head. "Captain, I can't go back in there." Cole leaned closer to him and whispered, "If you don't, it'll come for you first." That was enough. Benton picked up his rifle, but he didn't look steady. We stepped back inside. My boots sank into the straw. It crunched underfoot, but the sound didn't fade. It echoed over and over, like the floor was filled with invisible footsteps, copying us. I crouched by the hole again and reached for the bones. The first rib cage I pulled out was tangled in wire. The wire looked new, not from the war. My gloves cut on the sharp edge as I untwisted it. The second set of bones had buttons sewn into the straw, like someone had tried to stitch them into a body. It wasn't just unburied soldiers. Someone had built the Scarecrow from them. I didn't say it out loud, but Avery must have read my face. He muttered, "That thing's wearing them. That's why it won't let go." The radios hissed again, but now the static came with words. Dozens of voices, all layered, all fighting to be heard. Some begged for water, some prayed, some cursed, but one voice cut through clear as a blade. "You don't belong here." It wasn't from the Scarecrow, it was from the hole. The Scarecrow tilted its head like it was listening too. The glow inside its pumpkin face flared. Then it moved fast, faster than something made of straw should. It slid across the floor, cutting the distance in seconds, blocking the hole with its body. Cole raised his rifle again. "Move!" He fired. The rounds hit center mass. Straw burst into the air, glowing embers swirling in the light. The Scarecrow staggered, but the straw whipped back together, sealing the gaps. This time, though, something was different. For a split second, I saw faces inside the flying straw. Hollow eyes, mouths open like they were screaming. Then they vanished. "It's holding them," Avery said, his voice low. "The bones aren't the only thing trapped. The souls are tied into it. You can't just bury bones if the rest is sewn into that monster." The chapel groaned. The walls shook. From outside came the faint toll of a bell. Slow, hollow. The bell tower had been gone for years, but the sound was real. Benton panicked. He ran for the door. He yanked at the handle, pulling with all his weight. The door didn't budge. Then the wood shuddered, as if something heavy pressed against it from the other side. He stumbled back, gasping. "Trapped," he whispered. "We're trapped." The Scarecrow raised both arms and slammed them down on the floor. The boards cracked wide. Bones spilled out like water from a broken dam. Skulls, rib cages, jawbones. They rolled across the chapel floor, clattering against the walls. Some still had scraps of gray cloth. Some had teeth gritted like they died in pain. Cole cursed and stepped back. "There's too many. We'll never finish this." The radio screamed with static so loud it felt like knives in my ears. I ripped mine off my vest and threw it down. But even without it, the voices filled the room. Orders shouted over gunfire. A drumbeat. The sound of bayonets clashing. It was like the Battle of Perryville was happening again right inside those walls. I dropped to one knee and covered my head. My chest felt like it was being crushed. The air reeked of blood and smoke, though there was no fire. My eyes burned. Through it all, Avery's voice cut steady. "Listen to me. It doesn't want us dead. Not yet. It wants the harvest finished. That's why it hasn't torn us apart." "What harvest?" Cole shouted. Avery pointed at the bones. "Them. All of them. Until every piece is in the ground, it won't stop." Hargrove's face was pale, but he nodded. "Then we keep digging." That was the moment the Scarecrow lunged. It moved like smoke, arms whipping out. Straw wrapped around Cole's chest, yanking him off his feet. He hit the wall hard, rifle clattering away. The Scarecrow's pumpkin face leaned close to him, its grin twisting, the carved mouth widening beyond what a pumpkin could hold. Cole screamed. His body convulsed as the straw wrapped tighter, pulling into his mouth, his nose, his eyes. It looked like it was trying to stuff him full of itself. Hargrove raised his pistol and fired point blank. The bullet blew a hole straight through the pumpkin head. Orange light spilled out like fire. The Scarecrow staggered and dropped Cole. Cole crawled to the wall coughing, eyes wide. He was alive, but his face was cut with straw burns, and his skin looked pale, almost drained. The Scarecrow's pumpkin twisted, reshaping itself. The bullet hole closed. The grin came back, wider than before. "That's not working," Hargrove said flatly. Avery grabbed a skull from the floor. He carried it past the Scarecrow, straight toward the door. For a second, I thought the thing would stop him, but it didn't. It stepped aside, head tilting, watching. Avery laid the skull down just outside the threshold of the chapel, on the earth. The glow inside the pumpkin dimmed. "That's it," Avery said. His voice had weight now, like he was sure. "It wants them in the ground, not in the walls." We scrambled into action. Each of us grabbed bones, carrying them to the cemetery outside. Benton was still trembling, but he moved faster than anyone. Cole staggered along, coughing, but he carried what he could. We dug shallow graves with our knives, our helmets, our bare hands. But the bones kept coming. Every time we thought we were close, more spilled from the chapel floor. The pile seemed endless. The Scarecrow stood by the altar, never moving, only watching, its grin burning brighter with each burial. Then the earth shook. The graves we had just dug cracked open. The soil pushed back up. Hands of straw broke through, pulling at the dirt. The bones we'd buried were being dragged back out. Benton screamed, "It's undoing it!" "No," Avery said, his eyes locked on the Scarecrow. "It's not undoing it. It's testing us. It wants to see if we'll finish, no matter how many times it fights." Hargrove cursed under his breath. He looked at me. "We're not making it out of this if we don't commit. Every bone, every piece, all night if we have to." The pumpkin head turned toward him. For the first time, the carved mouth moved. Not like a grin, but like words shaping. The voice scraped the air. "Finish! The harvest!" The chapel walls rattled. The bell tolled again. And then from the hole, a shape started to rise. Not just bones, not just straw. A full figure, taller than any man, stitched together from what had been hidden below. A second Scarecrow, forming in the shadows. The one at the altar turned its head toward it, the grin stretching thin. We realized too late. There wasn't just one. There never had been. The second one climbed out of the floor slow, like it was being born from the dirt itself. Bones snapped into place. Straw filled the gaps. Cloth scraps hung like rotting flesh. Its head wasn't carved yet, just a raw pumpkin with no face, glowing faintly from inside. The first Scarecrow at the altar tilted its head toward it, like a father watching a son take its first steps. Benton dropped the skull he was carrying. It cracked against the floor. "There's two of them," he whispered. His voice was broken. Cole tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "What's next? A whole army?" None of us answered. Hargrove raised his pistol and fired at the second one's pumpkin head. The round punched through clean, spraying orange pulp across the rafters. The glow dimmed for half a second, then returned stronger. Lines started carving themselves into the pumpkin skin. A grin. Eyes. The same terrible face as the first. "Stop shooting," Avery barked. "You're feeding it." He was right. Every time we tried to fight it like a man, it grew stronger. The floor rattled again, and more bones spilled out. Ribs clattered against boots. A skull bounced off the wall and rolled into the aisle, its empty socket staring up at us. The chapel was turning into a battlefield again. The voices in the radios came back, louder than before. I heard cannon fire, horses screaming, the clash of bayonets. The air filled with the stink of powder and rot, like we'd been dragged into the middle of the Civil War itself. I dropped to one knee, gripping the skull Benton had dropped. It was cold, so cold it burned through my gloves. I carried it toward the door. My chest felt like someone was pressing on it the whole way, but the Scarecrows didn't stop me. The second one just stood there, watching me with its new grin. I laid the skull in the dirt, covered it fast. When the soil pressed down, the radios went quiet for a few seconds. No gunfire, no screams, just silence. That silence gave me hope. "We keep burying," I said louder this time. "That's the only way." Hargrove met my eyes. He nodded once, then gave orders. "Pairs, move fast, no stopping. Ignore everything else." We fell into rhythm. Grab bones, carry them out, dig with bare hands, cover, repeat. The soil took them easy. For a while it worked. But the Scarecrows didn't just watch. They started to move, circling us like guards. Every time one of us slowed down, the straw arms twitched. Every time one of us looked away from the work, the carved grins widened. Benton cracked first. He froze halfway across the yard, holding a rib cage like it weighed 100 pounds. His knees buckled. The rib cage fell into the dirt. He stared at the Scarecrow by the altar, whispering, I can't do this." The second Scarecrow moved in a blur. It crossed the chapel and reached him before any of us could shout. Straw arms wrapped around his shoulders, pulling him close. The pumpkin face leaned down, the grin splitting wide. Benton screamed. It wasn't just fear. His voice sounded like it was being pulled out of him. His skin went pale, his body sagging. The Scarecrow stuffed straw into his mouth, his nose, his eyes, like it was hollowing him out from the inside. I lunged forward, but Avery grabbed my arm. His voice was flat. "If you touch him, it'll take you too." We watched Benton thrash, then go limp. His body dropped in the dirt. When I looked closer, I saw straw poking through his uniform, pushing through his skin like it had rooted inside him. His chest didn't rise. His eyes were wide and empty. The Scarecrow stepped back. Benton lay still. For a second, I thought he was gone. Then his arm twitched. He sat up slow, stiff, like a puppet. His mouth opened. A dry hiss came out, not his voice. He stood swaying, straw spilling from his sleeves. Cole cursed. They turned him. He's theirs now. Hargrove raised his pistol, aimed at Benton's head. He didn't fire. His hands shook for the first time all night. Benton's body turned toward us, that dry hiss echoing from his throat. He staggered forward, straw stretching from his limbs like strings. Avery stepped between him and the rest of us. "Captain, bury the bones." Now. The Scarecrows didn't move. They just watched, as if waiting to see what we would do. Benton's body lurched closer, his arms hanging stiff, straw spilling from his fingertips. I shoved past Hargrove and grabbed another skull from the pile. I carried it fast, slammed it into the earth, dug dirt over it with my bare hands. My nails ripped, my skin bled, but I didn't stop. When the skull was covered, the second Scarecrow faltered for a moment. Its grin flickered, the light in its eyes dimming. "That's it!" I shouted. "Every bone we bury weakens them." Cole scrambled to grab more. He carried 2 femurs out at once, dirt spraying as he dug with his boots. Avery dragged an entire rib cage, muttering under his breath, words I didn't recognize. Maybe a prayer. The ground shook harder. The chapel groaned like it would collapse. The Scarecrows both raised their arms, straw whipping through the air like whips. Benches shattered. Dust fell in clouds. But they didn't stop us. They couldn't, not as long as we kept going. Benton's body lunged at Avery. He ducked, rolled, and shoved the rib cage into the ground. As the dirt covered it, Benton froze. His straw-filled chest cracked open, a glow leaking out. He screamed once, high and broken, then collapsed into the dirt. His body went still for good. 1 down, 3 of us left. The Scarecrows roared. It wasn't sound. It was the whole chapel shaking at once, the air rattling in our lungs. The grins stretched wide, splitting further than faces should split. Fire licked the edges of their carved mouths. The ground outside split open. Graves we had just dug cracked apart, dirt spraying into the air. But this time, the bones stayed down. The soil held them, even against the roar. "They're losing," Avery said. He was breathing hard, his hands bleeding from the digging. "We're close." Hargrove didn't waste time. "Then finish it." We moved faster, pulling bones from the hole, running them out, slamming them into the earth. Every burial dimmed the Scarecrows more. Their glow faltered, their grins twitched, their arms sagged. But the second one wasn't done. It lunged straight at me, faster than I could move. Straw arms wrapped around my chest, squeezing hard. I couldn't breathe. The pumpkin face leaned down, the grin stretching open like it was going to swallow my head whole. Heat rolled off it, burning my skin. Hargrove tackled it from the side. He slammed the pry bar straight into the pumpkin head, splitting it down the middle. Light poured out like fire, blinding me. The Scarecrow screeched, the sound like 1,000 dry leaves tearing at once. It dropped me, staggering back. Avery grabbed the last skull from the pile. He carried it outside, both hands cradling it like it was alive. He dropped to his knees, dug into the earth with bleeding fingers, and pressed the skull down. When the dirt covered it, the chapel shook like an earthquake. Both Scarecrows screamed. Their pumpkin heads cracked, light spilling out. The straw bodies unraveled, spinning apart in the air. The grins vanished. The glow died. The chapel went dark. We stood there in silence, covered in dirt and blood, breathing hard. The radios were quiet, no voices, no static, just silence. The Scarecrows were gone, but Hargrove didn't move. He was still kneeling in the dirt, his hands gripping the pry bar. His chest rose once, twice. Then the straw wrapped around his arms. He looked at me, calm, steady. "Finish it," he said. The straw dragged him toward the hole. He didn't fight. He let it take him, disappearing into the dark. His voice came once more through the radio, faint and broken. "It's done. The harvest is done." The chapel fell silent again. Only 3 of us had walked in. Now 2 of us stood outside, staring at the graves, waiting to see if the earth would hold. And it did. The chapel stood quiet after it all ended. No voices, no static, no rattling boards. Just silence. A silence so heavy it felt wrong, like the place was finally empty for the first time in 100 years. Avery and I stood outside in the yard. Cole was slumped against the fence, pale, still coughing from when the straw had gotten inside him. His face was cut raw, his eyes red, but he was alive. That counted for something. The graves we dug held. The soil didn't shift. No hands clawed back up. No bones rolled loose. The pumpkins that lined the path had gone dark, their carved mouths sagging like melted wax. They looked ordinary now. Dead. But Hargrove was gone, taken under. We both knew he wasn't coming back. Avery knelt in the dirt with his coin still in his hand. He rubbed it slow, staring at the fresh mounds we had made. His voice was calm but heavy. He finished it. He gave himself so the rest could stay buried. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. My throat was dry, my body shaking from exhaustion. My hands were torn up and bleeding, packed with dirt under the nails. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that the scarecrows were gone. Cole finally looked up at us. His voice cracked. "We don't write this down. We don't say a word." He was right. If we told command, they'd say we lost our captain in a collapse. Maybe call us cowards, maybe worse. No one would believe what really happened. They'd say the stress broke us, or they'd bury it in a file no one ever saw again. Avery stood, wiped his hands on his uniform, and looked at me. "Report says chapel secure. No further activity, nothing more." I nodded again. That was the only truth we could afford. We walked down the ridge slow, leaving the chapel behind us. The October wind had picked up again. It carried the smell of fresh earth and cold air, not rot or straw. The night felt clean, but empty. Too empty. By the time we reached the truck, the sky had started to pale on the horizon. Dawn was coming. The radios were quiet. No more voices, no more battle sounds. Just static, faint and harmless, like it had always been. Cole sat in the back of the truck, his head leaning against the window. He didn't say anything the whole ride back. His hands shook when he lit a cigarette. Avery didn't speak either. He just stared at the coin, flipping it over and over in his palm. When we reached camp, the guards on duty barely looked at us. They just waved us in. We looked like any other patrol, tired and dirty. No one asked about Hargrove. Not yet. That would come later. We filed the report before sunrise, chapel secure. No signs of trespass, no further activity, no casualties listed. Just another line in a folder no one would read twice. After that, life at camp went back to routine. Drills, meals, maintenance, orders. But nothing felt normal. Not for me, not for Avery, not for Cole. Benton was gone, and so was Hargrove. Two names that would never be spoken again. Two men who'd been pulled into something bigger than any war we'd been trained for. That night I couldn't sleep. I walked out past the tents, past the trucks, to the edge of the field where the moon lit the ground pale. I thought about Hargrove's last words. "The harvest is done." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe it was finished. But I kept seeing that grin carved into the pumpkin face, wide and alive, watching. The days that followed blurred together. We never spoke about the chapel. We trained, we drilled, we moved on, or at least we pretended to. Cole stopped joking. He barely spoke at all. Avery prayed more, quiet, head bowed over his coin. I kept to myself, trying to bury the memory like we buried those bones. It didn't work. 2 weeks later, I heard from a supply driver who had passed through Perryville. He said the locals were already talking. On Halloween night, the pumpkins had gone dark for the first time anyone could remember. The chapel had been quiet, no lights, no sounds. But then he added something else. He said that a week later, one pumpkin had been seen by the chapel door. Just one. Fresh, carved with a wide grin, burning bright. I didn't tell Avery or Cole. I kept it to myself. Maybe the harvest was done. Maybe it wasn't. But I knew one thing for sure. Some places don't let go, no matter how deep you bury the bones. And Perryville's chapel was one of them. I've thought about that night more times than I can count. Sometimes it feels like a memory. Other times it feels like a dream I can't wake up from. The chapel, the Scarecrow Men, the bones. Hargrove's voice on the radio telling us the harvest was done. It plays over in my head, slow and steady, like it happened yesterday. We never went back to Perryville. Our orders took us elsewhere. That's how the military works. You move on. You follow new commands, new missions. But some places don't leave you. That chapel stayed with me. It followed me into every quiet night, every long patrol, every time the radios hissed with static. Avery and I never spoke of it again. Not once. He carried his coin, and I knew he prayed for the men we buried. For Hargrove, too. Cole changed the most. He stopped joking. He got quiet, like part of him never left that ridge. When he looked at you, his eyes seemed older than the rest of him. The official record shows nothing. One page. Chapel secure. No signs of trespass. No further activity. No casualties. That's what the files say. That's all anyone will ever see if they go digging. But I know what really happened. We walked into a place that held more than bones. We walked into the weight of history, into something that had been fed for years, maybe decades. Every Halloween, the locals saw it, and every Halloween it waited for someone to finish what had been left undone. We were the unlucky ones sent that night. Sometimes I wonder if it was luck at all, or if we were chosen. I think about Benton. Young, nervous, too green for what we faced. He didn't deserve that ending. None of us did. But the chapel took him anyway, turned him into part of itself. I still see his face when I close my eyes, the straw pushing out through his skin. I see the way he screamed before the ground claimed him. And Hargrove, he knew. I think he knew the moment he saw those new boards on the floor. He wasn't the kind of man who believed in ghosts, but he knew soldiers. He knew what it meant to leave the dead behind. He carried the weight for us in the end, let the Scarecrow take him so the rest of us could walk away. That wasn't in the report, but I'll never forget it. The truth is, the Scarecrow Man didn't want blood. It didn't want battle. It wanted what had been denied for too long. Rest. The bones under that chapel weren't buried right. They weren't remembered. That's what gave it power. That's what kept it alive. We finished it that night, or at least we tried. We buried what we could. We did the work no one else had done in 150 years. And for a moment, the land was quiet. But then came the rumor. One pumpkin burning at the door a week later. Just one. Fresh, grinning, waiting. I don't know if that means we failed, or if it means the harvest is never truly finished. When I tell this story now, I don't expect anyone to believe me. On paper, it sounds impossible. Straw men with pumpkin heads, bones spilling from the floor. Radios filled with ghost voices from a battle fought before we were born. If I hadn't lived it, I wouldn't believe it either. But I did live it, and I'll carry it until the day I die. So if you ever find yourself near Perryville on Halloween night, don't go near that ridge. Don't follow the pumpkins if you see them glowing. Don't listen if the static on your radio starts to sound like drums or bugles. And if you do hear a voice whisper, "Finish the harvest," turn around, leave. Because once you step inside that chapel, you don't walk back out the same. That night, we walked in as soldiers. We came out as survivors. 2 of us never came out at all. And every October, when the wind gets cold and the nights feel too long, I think about that grinning face. I think about the way it watched us. And I wonder if one day it'll come looking again. Maybe the harvest is never done. But for me, for Avery, for Cole, it ended on that ridge in Kentucky. And that's as close to peace as any of us will ever get. Don't turn off the light now. If the story chilled you, subscribe to Blackout War Stories. And for more horror, the next nightmares are waiting on your screen.